Everyone at the office thought Mia was just a quiet, ordinary girl. She kept to herself, dressed simply, and never complained even when she was treated unfairly. Her ideas were often ignored, her efforts taken for granted, and her presence mocked behind her back. Some called her weak. Others just laughed. But one day, without warning, Mia packed her things, smiled gently, and walked out, leaving her job behind. No one thought twice about it. She was, in their eyes, forgettable. But the silence didn't last long. The very next day, luxury cars pulled up outside the office. People watched in confusion as a sharply dressed man stepped out. His name was Ethan, and he wasn't just powerful. He was one of the richest businessmen in the city. What? No one knew. He was Mia's older brother. And he hadn't come for a visit. He had come with a message move that would leave the office in shock, the bullies in shame, and the entire company on the edge of collapse. Suddenly, the woman they mocked was the one they wished they had respected all along. But by then, it was already too late. The office was buzzing with whispers as Ethan walked through the glass doors. No one could understand what a billionaire like him was doing there. Even the manager, Mr. Collins, who used to mock Mia openly in meetings, stood frozen, unsure whether to smile or run. Ethan didn't raise his voice or throw around his power. Instead, he calmly requested a meeting with the entire staff. His tone was polite, but the weight in his words made everyone sit up straight. As they gathered in the conference room, eyes darted nervously. Ethan placed a sleek folder on the table. Inside were documents, not threats, but opportunities. He had just acquired the company. And now, things were about to change. But he didn't mention Mia yet. Instead, he asked questions, simple ones. Who here supported their teammates? Who gave credit where it was due? The silence said everything. The people who once laughed the loudest now stared at their shoes. Meanwhile, Mia, away from all the noise, was sitting at a quiet cafe, sipping her coffee. She didn't know what her brother was planning. She hadn't asked for revenge. But Ethan had seen everything. And he remembered every name, every face that once looked down on his sister. And this was only the beginning, as the tension thickened. In the room, Ethan slowly walked around the table, glancing at each face. No one dared to speak. Some tried to fake confidence, others whispered nervously to each other. He paused in front of Mia's former manager and calmly asked, "Do you remember a woman named Mia?" The man shifted uncomfortably in his chair, mumbling something about her being quiet but decent. Ethan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Interesting, because I remember how she cried after work. I remember how she stayed up all night doubting herself. And I remember how none of you stood up for her." People exchanged uneasy glances. One of the coworkers who used to mock Mia's lunch and outfits leaned forward, trying to explain. "We didn't know she was your sister," Ethan raised, a hand stopping her mid-sentence. "So kindness has conditions now." His voice was calm, but every word landed heavy. He turned to the whiteboard and began outlining new changes, policy shifts, leadership restructuring, and most importantly, a review of every single employee's behavior and role. It wasn't just about power anymore. It was about principle. Back at the cafe, Mia's phone buzzed. She saw Ethan's name, but hesitated. She hadn't wanted revenge-only peace. But what was coming next wasn't about her anymore. It was about something much bigger. As the week unfolded, the office shifted into a strange, uneasy silence. People whispered in corners, tried to scrub old emails, and even deleted chat messages, hoping no one would find what they had said about Mia. But Ethan didn't need digital proof. He had seen it with his own eyes. And he hadn't forgotten a thing. Each day, more changes were announced. Department heads were asked to re-interview for their own jobs. Evaluations were being done, not based on titles, but on how people treated others, especially the so-called invisible ones. Mia still hadn't returned. She stayed away, unsure of what her brother was really doing. She didn't want drama. But the stories started to reach her. A coworker messaged her in secret, apologizing and warning her that some people were trying to twist the story, claiming Mia had used her brother's influence all along. That she planned it, that she was never just a simple woman. The gossip was getting louder, and with it, the desperation. Those who once laughed at her were now trying to save their own skin, rewriting history, pretending they'd always liked her. Back at the office, Ethan prepared for the final meeting. A full staff gathering had been scheduled, mandatory for everyone. No one knew what was coming. Rumors flew. Was the company being sold? Were mass firings coming? Or worse, would Mia be walking through that door, holding the final say on who stayed and who left? The tension was thick. And as the clock ticked down, hearts pounded, everyone waited. The clock struck 11, and the meeting room filled with nervous chatter. People glanced around, eyes glued to the door. Then it opened, but it wasn't Mia. It was a woman in a gray suit, unknown to most of them. She walked straight to the front, placed a laptop on the table, and introduced herself as a corporate investigator. Ethan had hired her to conduct an internal ethics review. The room went dead silent as she clicked through her presentation. Screenshots popped up, anonymous surveys, internal communications, records of complaints that were never addressed. Faces paled. Some shifted uncomfortably in their seats. She never named anyone directly, but everyone knew who the messages were about. And just when the tension felt unbearable, the door opened again. Mia stepped in. Her presence alone caused a ripple across the room. Some looked ashamed, others shocked. But no one dared to speak. She wasn't dressed for revenge, just in her usual simple clothes, hair tied back, calm as ever. She walked slowly, scanning the room, not with bitterness, but with quiet strength. Then, Ethan stood beside her and said something no one expected. This isn't just about Mia anymore. This is about every person like her, overlooked, underestimated, disrespected. And the real question is, how many of you are still doing it? You could feel the air shift. The tension wasn't just about the past anymore. It was about who would survive what came next. The room held its breath as Ethan's words echoed. No one dared to move. Mia stood beside him, still silent, her presence louder than anything said. Then, finally, she spoke, not with anger, but with calm certainty. I didn't come here to humiliate anyone. I came because I used to believe I didn't matter, and some of you made sure I felt that way. Her eyes swept across the room. But I do matter. And so does every person you've ever dismissed or mocked just because they didn't look powerful enough. One of her former coworkers stood up, trying to apologize, but Ethan raised his hand. It's not about saying sorry now. It's about how you choose to act going forward. Then came the twist. Ethan revealed that the company wouldn't be shutting down. Instead, it was being transformed. Leadership would change, departments would be restructured, and everyone would reapply for their positions. But there was more. He turned to Mia and handed her a slim envelope. "This is yours," he said. Mia opened it slowly. Inside was a formal offer, ownership of the company's newest branch, a division that focused on workplace ethics and people-first policies. She was stunned. "I never asked for this," she whispered. Ethan smiled. "That's exactly why. You deserve it." And just when it seemed like everything was over, Ethan dropped one final reveal. "Also," he said, glancing at the nervous faces around the table, "the new branch will decide who's staying and who's not, and Mia's in charge of building the team." Gasps filled the room. The same people who once mocked her were now waiting quiet, uncertain, hoping she'd see them differently than they once saw her. Mia looked around the room one last time, not with pride, but with a quiet sense of peace. She knew who had stood against her and who had simply stood by. She didn't need revenge or payback. What she wanted now was purpose. Over the next few weeks, she began building her new team, choosing not based on resumes, but on kindness, work ethic, and respect for others. A few former colleagues, the ones who had treated her fairly even when no one was watching, were welcomed with open arms. The rest moved on, forced to reflect on the culture they had once helped shape. Under Mia's leadership, the new branch grew quickly. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was about creating a space where people felt seen, supported, and valued. Clients started noticing the shift. Even employees from the main office began requesting transfers, drawn to the environment she had built from scratch. Ethan stepped back, proud to watch his sister lead, not with power, but with grace. Mia never asked for a spotlight, but life gave it to her anyway. Because sometimes the quietest voices carry the loudest truths. And the people the world underestimates often end up rewriting the story on their own terms.